What is going on, Mentees? The Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition. And I'm joined by...
Astonishing Melanie!
My lovely wife, the Astonishing Melanie. Oh. And today we're going to be looking at Chip-Zdarsky's Spider-Man-Life-Story. This one is a book I did a quick first look at, but I think it deserves a review. And unlike most of our reviews that are spoiler-free, we are going to be talking about spoilers, so just a heads up. But we're still going to make it quick. Melanie, Astonishing Melanie, why don't you give me a quick rundown as to what Chip-Zdarsky and Mark Bagley, by the way, wonderful book is about.
Okay, so it's 6 issues. Each of these 6 issues is going through a decade of Spider-Man's life, starting with the 60s. Yep. And it's really cool to see the covers of each of the issues kind of capture the feel and the look of that decade. And definitely to see how Spider-Man grows throughout each decade. Now, the story has elements that we know and love in each decade, but there's twists, and I really appreciate the twists. I love how they wove such a tight story with just 6 issues of it's covering 10 years, right, in just one issue. Very tight story.
It is pretty awesome. And one of the things you got to know about this is that he is aging in real time. He is not like in the 60s, when he was a teenager, he was still a teenager in the 70s and 80s. No, he is getting older, and that's why it's called the life story. So like Melanie said, it starts off in the 60s, issue 2's in the 70s, 80s. And then what Chip-Zdarsky does is this amazing amalgam of all these storylines. Like, I think one of my favorite ones, like I said, we're going to talk about spoilers. So it kicks off with Gwen Stacy introducing her, Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn. But then Flash Thompson goes to Vietnam, which he did in the comic books. But he dies. In the 70s, when you flash forward to the 70s, you see that he's dead, and now you see Peter visiting Mr. Fantastic, and he looks a lot older because he's got a beard in the 70s. Yeah.
So, MJ is mad at Peter for allowing Flash to go to war. She's like, you could have stopped him with all your power. What about your responsibility? And he's like, what? She's like, yeah, I figured it out a long time ago. And he was like, you could have stopped him. And
I love that it was his fault.
But anyway, so it's I thought it was really cool how, it wasn't the stereotypical Gwen falling off of a bridge.
No, it was an interesting mixture of that and the Clone Saga.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Which I hate clones in any story. So I didn't like the clone part, but I'm okay with it. The twist at the end of
we can talk about the twist.
Yeah, twist at the end of that issue of, the real Gwen was hidden away the whole time by the scientist.
The Jackal. Warren. Dr. Warren.
Peter had been married to the clone of Gwen.
That was dark. So when he found out that his wife was a clone.
The real Gwen died. The clone Gwen went off, and she's like, I gotta live my own life. Golly.
Yeah, that was an awesome twist in the Clone Saga storyline, and that was in the 70s, and then in the 80s we get a mix of like Doc Ock, he's super old, and the Kraven's Last Hunt. Yeah. And Kraven's Last Hunt takes
with the symbiote. Was that the 80s one?
Yeah,
it ends the black suit.
Yeah, the black suit, the symbiote, like merging with old Kraven as he would have aged, because everybody else is aging too. So then that takes us to the 90s, and that.
And during this time, Peter did marry MJ. When he went off to Secret War, she was pregnant, came back, and he's got twins.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a rough part. That was sad.
Because they're aging as well.
I mean, him and Mary Jane at the beginning of their marriage, the couple decades, they're not doing well at all. In fact, like she left him.
Yeah.
So that part was rough. That was definitely different, at least from all the Spider-Man that I read. That they have tiffs, but they're madly in love, and
everything.
No,
works
they're
out
not madly in love.
Yeah, and they let you know how it. I mean, it speaks true to life though, how things are. Not everything is grand and beautiful, and
I love you.
I love you too, except for our marriage, right?
So let's see, 90s.
So that takes us into the 90s, where it's primarily focused on Doc Ock, and I guess there's the return of Melanie's favorite plot line, the Clone Saga.
Ben Reilly.
Yeah, Ben Reilly's introduced, but I thought it was a pretty unique way of doing it.
Yeah.
Literally, it's one issue. And I get that it's, a span of 10 years, but you're just one issue compared to, 500 comic books based on the Clone Saga. So.
That reminds me, now that I think about it, at the beginning with the 60s issue, there was a lot of inner monologuing, which matched that storytelling back then. And there's still a lot of, to keep the story tight, a lot of monologuing or dialogue that's not real dialogue, it's just telling the story.
Yeah.
But as it goes along, it turns into more of, I guess, the modern way of telling a story. So I really appreciate that.
I didn't even think about that. I just, because I read it all in one sitting. I didn't even think about the transition of the storytelling and the narrative. That's pretty good. That's a good point. English major. So that takes us into the early aughts, which is the other storyline, the Morlun and those characters coming in, threatening his family.
I think that was my favorite.
Really?
I mean, I really like parts of the last one. Maybe because it was a little bit more adventurous.
Yeah.
And now as opposed to the heavy dialogue in the first couple issues.
And he's in his 50s then,
so Morlun is after, Spider Peoples. So Parker came back to his wife and kids.
Yep.
And they've got powers. So
Morlun's
after them. And so that was cool to see them, squaring off against Morlun. And, the Civil War.
That's right. That was the Civil War.
Yeah.
So a bunch of storylines mixed together.
So that was added in, and
the Iron Spider
better
suit.
than Bendis's, I'm sure.
It was Mark Miller, but that's okay.
Bendis did Civil War, didn't he?
Don't argue with me. It's Mark Miller.
I thought Bendis wrote the dialogue.
No, Bendis didn't. Anyway, that's another
Cut
topic.
that. Cut
no,
that
we're
out.
not cutting it.
No.
We're leaving it in. All right. Then that takes us to the final issue, the 2010s. Is that what it's called? 2010.
But it's 2019.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty interesting
It's
because that's borrows heavy from Dan Slott's run. So it's one more day after. Except the marriage is still there, of course. But it borrows heavily from the Doc Ock switching bodies with him.
With Miles Morales.
And it introduces Miles Morales. Now, Bendis did create Miles Morales in the Ultimate Universe.
Well, that's not what I was thinking about.
Oh, okay.
Now, in the last issue, that's when their love show, Peter and MJ, and it was romantic. Like at the end.
Right before he dies. So the story, it's like he goes out into space, right?
With Miles.
With Miles, and
he is going to go save humanity with Miles. And I love this part that he's joking around because he lost his jokes in the 90s and early aughts, right?
He's an old dude now.
Now he's joking around. And Miles Morales is like, be serious. Shut up. Come on.
I remember.
This is serious.
I remember his last line made me tear up. Like when he's thinking of MJ.
The last part really got to me. At the beginning of the final issue, Peter wants to tell MJ about his dream. She's like, dreams are boring to other people. Just tell me when you get back. And at the end of the story, after he's passed away, it goes back to that dream he had started talking about
Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben and how he let the robber get away. He said, but this time it was a good dream. And it has him flipping out webbing so that he catches the robber. And that's the end.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that made me tear up.
Stuff happens. Oh, you're really Doc Ock, blah, blah, blah. And as he's about to die, it's him and MJ in their 20s, early 30s, lying in bed and talking to each other. And it reminded me of something you printed off for me.
From the JMS run. I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, where Peter's watching MJ sleep, and it's really romantic.
Yeah, that was a beautiful scene. And I love when he says, I'm the one that hit the jackpot. Or you are my jackpot.
Oh, I got goosebumps!
That was a good line. And I love that MJ is the one that gives Miles the costume. She's like, I think it's time that you wear this. It was good. And it was a good send-off. It was a beautiful story. What if Spider-Man had age in real time? So, for me, this is a book that deserves a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, 5 out of 5.
Wow, look at you!
Yeah. If you're a Spider-Man fan, then this is a great read. You really appreciate it. I appreciate it. It wouldn't work right if it was trying to stick to canon. And you couldn't do 6 issues.
There's a lot of free range in there.
Yeah, it's taking things in that universe and just twisting them a different way.
Yeah.
Kind of like Tenchi Muyo, if you ever read that. It's told over and over, but slightly different ways.
Wow, that is a 20-year-old anime. Okay.
That's the thumbnail. The clickbait.
That's what,
this is like 10G.
No one's going to click on this. So thank you to Marvel and David Gabriel for sending us a copy of this book. It was a wonderful read, and I read it right away, and I knew I was like, I got to read it with my wife, and we are going to review it. So thank you for watching. Like I said, this is a very different reviews in a flash because we are talking about spoilers. So don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. Thank you to our Patreons, our existing patrons.
Stay minty!
And remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be near mint. I'm trying to make that happen.